This presentation is titled I Spy a Spy, Degrading Advanced Phishing Campaigns, and I'll give you Joe Oney to give his presentation to you.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out where the mic goes here. All right. First off, in the utmost of respect to the Shmoo group and they're correct. It's Shmoocon2023, of course. So, and Landon, I'll change that after, so Virginia doesn't get mad at me. Okay. So I'm Joe Oney. I've been in cybersecurity about 13 years. Got started through the Department of Defense. And my background is really incident response, and I come from the intelligence side of things, from the DoD, and so I generally take that approach to incident response and security operations. Currently, I'm an intelligence consultant with NISOS, and I'm still in the Kentucky National Guard, hopefully not for too much longer. I'm at 19 years, so it's time to get out. Previously, I was a security operations manager for Hogan Lovells, a large law firm, and information security manager at UPS. Also did a lot of the building of the security operations program at UPS as well. So the next 45 minutes, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to start with some baselining, where I just we all get on the same page, so we're using the same lexicon. We talk about certain phishing types through the rest of the presentation, and I'll talk about the end goals of the presentation as well, right? And then I'll get into the actual meat, the 4 phases, being requirements, setup, tactical reaction, strategic and political enablement of the output from the actions, and then a lower effort alternative, and also a lower maturity alternative would be in there as well. We'll talk about some impact, and hopefully at the end we have time for Q&A. So baselining. So the good old phishing attacks, right? They just username and password, right? This is your classic phishing attack, like this one, pay guy, almost got me, because I'm a pay guy user. Any other pay guy users? No? Okay, well, you guys should try it, it's great. I'll send you an email. But this is the classic stuff, right? I mean, it's just username and password. And then these days we have these new school phishing attacks, right? You have these Evil Jinx 2, Exprobotos, Crypto. They're not made for evil, of course, right? They're just for security testing, like all of our tools. So don't use them for evil. But these in particular, they can get through multi-factor authentication schemes, right? So they're setting up the proxy server in the middle of the communications, phishing the user, and then they intercept all the traffic between them and the legitimate, probably not malicious, depending on how you define malicious, right? Is O365 malicious? Yeah, sometimes, But so in between there, they're capturing all the traffic. They're getting, the tokens, and that's the end goal for them is the tokens, so that they can log in. We do have an advantage in that, you can do a lot of blocking phishing things, right? There's all the old school stuff, right? You can do your DKIM and DMARC and SPF and all that to help. You can do URL rewriting. There's a multitude of things you can do to defend against phishing attacks. You can train your users, right? That's another thing you can do. I mean, that's the minimum really at this point. And my opinion on it is that you can't depend on training your users. So if you can, build an environment where users can make mistakes, right? That's what the URL rewriting and things like that are for. Build a secure environment where your users can click on phishing links without ruining your day. I like thinking about how I can reach out and touch bad guys. That might be the DoD in me, but I really like messing with the bad guys, right? I want to make their day hard when they're trying to make my day hard, right? And that's the point, right? So this talk is really, a talk about deception. There's been a couple deception talks today. There was one just before lunch. It was really good. And then Chris Sanders came out with the book last year, Intrusion Detection of Honeypots. And a lot of deception is focused on the inside, right? It's about using the credentials internally, making some, fake servers and things like that. My approach is really an externally based, deception technique, right? That's what this is about. So it's about, and you guys can feel free to leave the room after this slide. That's what it's here for, right? You're like, oh, okay, I'd rather see how much a con costs, right? Which is fine. But here's the deal. So we'll set up alerting for when certain credentials are used, right? So in your infrastructure, do some, let's make some fake accounts, do things like that. When a phishing page happens and we detect it, we get it from a user like whatever, we're going to log in using those Honey credentials. Hopefully we can set up an environment where those, when the attacker uses those credentials, they'll log in, we can watch them, do all the things. That's where we're gathering data on everything. And we'll take action when we get bored, because they're going to be rummaging through like empty OneNote or, OneDrive or like whatever. And you're like, okay, what are you even looking for, guy? And then we'll just block their IP. And then afterward, we'll use those things for, the sexier blue team stuff, threat hunting, detection engineering. And then, if you need it, you can use it to enact some change in your IT team. And that's the hope, right? It's all about like that systemic changes in security and making yourself a less attractive target. So, the 4 phases, right? So the first one's going to be requirements. So we're going to log authentication to externally facing applications. And be creative here, right? Like you have the portals that your clients use. You have your own externally facing things, O365, Okta, Gmail, like whatever you're using out there, right? But make sure you're logging those because that's the thing that we're going to key in on when we give attackers credentials, right? This is the hard mode. We'll get to the easy mode later. But we need some sort of logging in order to be successful here. And you can create Honey accounts with the logging you have available, right? And so look at the logging you have, figure out which ones are going to kind of work. You can look at historic phishing campaigns in your organization or against your clients, using your brands, and figure out what logging, what authentication you have available, create some Honey accounts, enable everything you feel comfortable enabling, right? This might take some finagling with the legal team, but enable what you can with the idea that you're going to give an attacker access to the things. And you're going to want to create accounts with MFA as well. Because we talk about those advanced phishing attacks, they're going to expect MFA. That's what they're there for. And so, anytime, and that's another point for alerting as well, if you have that MFA set up on that user. But they're going to expect that, and you want to just be able to get as much data as you can, so do as much homework as you can, set up as much logging based on the things you expect your attackers to do. The next point is going to be creating detection logic, right? So you have all the logging in place, but you're going to want to create some detection logic so that when the phishing happens, because it may not be immediate. I've seen both ways where the phishing is, automated. You see this a lot with like legacy protocols in O365 or Azure AD, right? That was a big thing where you log in and they would instantly hit your Azure AD legacy protocols to see if that user existed and if the password worked. And then also there's the manual side of it too, if it's more targeted where based on the email and then maybe they'll log in tomorrow or something. You never know. But you want those detections in place and you want, a plan for when that happens, right? That's another part of this, is you want to be able to create a plan, even if you're the only person doing this, you want to have a plan of action to take when the detections happen, create your playbooks, test your detections, just classic detection engineering stuff on these Honey tokens. And then, you're going to wait probably 10 seconds until a new phishing campaign starts, right? And then you have to wait until your user sends it to you or client or whatever. You're like, all right, yes, we have phishing. Now it's time for the setup. So you identified the phishing campaign. You're logging in with the Honey accounts. And there's some things you need to do here, right? There's proper OPSEC. Because at the end of this, the attacker is going to be on defense. And that's what we want. We want to, put them on defense. That's the point. Make them change the things that they're doing. Don't let it be easy. So when a phishing campaign is identified, use a good OPSEC, use a dedicated system, make it look like your normal system. You never know how successful phishing has been historically. They might have a good footprint of what a device looks like on your network. And use that to set up your system. And this is another part of that logging, right? When you go to this website, you never know what it's doing in the background with the redirects or anything like that. And so you want, Sysmon, Wireshark, just gather as much data as you can on everything that's happening when you go to the website and put in the Honey credentials. And then this is the hardest part for me. I'm not good at this. Take explicit notes on which Honey credentials are put in what site. It's the most boring stuff. But it is important for later, right? Because if you really want to get this to a mature level, you don't want to reuse Honey credentials. And this is tough, but you have to do this every time. And it's important for like long-term strategic looking at how effective your program is. We'll talk about later. It's important for your OPSEC considerations, for your notes, for writing your plans, for doing your detection logic. And there's easier ways to do it. You can build it into your detection logic to have the notes in there. Of like this was used on this site, so we know what phish adversary it came from. And then, if you're really cool, you're going to do basic analysis of site and traffic patterns, because this is going to be important when you're also trying to build a profile of your adversary, right? You want as much data as possible. Do they use the same framework for web hosting over and over again? They use the same like registrar? Are they, scraping your site entirely? Like, we used to have good luck because I had this one adversary that was just scraping our site, and they would leave the marketing data in there. And so it would ping back, like internal to our marketing systems. And we're like, oh, we get you immediately, right? Like that's easy. So you don't have to send a phishing email, we find you. And we were to build like a really nice, so this is your TTP for that adversary. And it helps us later measure our actual effects from things like this. And so if we can enact change, we're creating some pain, putting them on defense. And then tactical reaction. So this is, when the Honey accounts are used, and they will be, like let's be honest, they're not just collecting them to sell them, right? They're going to try them to make sure they work, and they're lazy, right? Adversaries are lazy. They're going to make OPSEC mistakes. They do it all the time, and they don't expect you to actually. They don't expect Honey credentials on phishing sites, right? They're sending the email out. They're just used to, users clicking the buttons and putting in the data. They're going to make those OPSEC mistakes, like track them, take advantage of this. There's things like this, right? This is just an example from Azure AD, where same IP address, it's like same browser. They're not going to any effort here. There's like mass logging in. And these are the type of things, you'll want to build your detection logic off of. You want to, look for mass events like this. And then, you're going to go back and use this data for threat hunting later, right? Like that's the point, is that we're going to create some data points, hopefully have some effects, right, by giving them Honey credentials and all that. But really, at a micro scale, you're creating good data for threat hunting. Like there's nothing better than threat hunting with intel that you created, right? Like it came from an adversary. You don't have to guess that this is like somebody just logging in or something. It's not a user, right? You gave them this fake data. Definitely an adversary. And you're like, okay, did this IP address log into anything else, like ever, right? How much logging do you have? Can you go back in time and say, oh, this guy's, logged into all these other accounts? Like those are compromised, right? Like that's what that means. So anything that account does, now you have intel, like real deal intel, on your adversary. And then, you take those appropriate defensive measures, right? We talked about when you're bored. But don't do it too early. I used to fight CISOs all the time on this, right? You're on the IR team. I'm sure you guys all run into this. Because the IR team, the IR lead, they're like, can we just watch the adversary for a little while, right? Can we just like leave them alone? And they're just like, no, it's my job on the line, like block it. And so I get both sides of it. But if you can talk them into it, the longer you wait and watch, the more you log, the more you'll learn. That's the short of it. And that's the case in all IR, right? If you can talk your CISO, legal teams into letting you get away with watching your adversaries, you're going to get a ton of better data, and your incident response is going to be better. And this is a good time to do it, right? This particular scenario, it's a controlled environment. Like, let's let, this bad guy take some actions. Let's let them do their thing. And we'll take some notes and, maybe write a blog post and we'll all be famous. All right, so strategic enablement. So this is, one of the, I like this side of it. It's not as fun as watching the bad guys, but it is important from the effect side of it. And so we're going to use the data that we gathered, the code and traffic patterns, all the things, right? You have your user agents, IP addresses. If you go back to, was it Cuckoo's Egg, where he talks about the order of the, the commands that were put in. If you give them access to the PowerShell on Azure, like, what do? Do they type, their options in a weird order? Everything you have is a good indication there. Do the detection engineering work after that. You have all this data. How much can you build into an alert? Like, these are very high fidelity alerts. Like, the more specific you can get, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And then don't forget to look historically. We talked a little about that with the threat hunting. Use all these indicators, right? And some of them may not seem very good from like user agents or something, a very generic user agent, but is the combination of that user agent normal for that geolocation, right? Is it normal for, the traffic patterns that you're seeing? And so the combination of two of these weak indicators can make really good detection engineering, right? Don't look down on any of them. And then political enablement, right? This is like all blue team, comes down to politics. Like even the talk before this, right? It was like super technical, and we're like, oh yeah, we can prevent, this in-memory attack. And it's like, well, if I can convince my IT team to let me do it, right? Like it's very cool. But do you have an IT team that hates changes, Like, no, IT teams love changes. And do you wish you could convince them to make things more secure? Like, yeah, sorry, this is a bit of a like late night infomercial at this point, isn't it? But that's kind of what you have, right? You have this whole case now of look, this guy came in, right, and he's using legacy protocols to like log into all of our users. Can we please turn off legacy protocols? Like, please? Can we just do that? That's not that hard. And then you can go back and see like how many of the actions that the adversary took do your users take. If they're doing some weird stuff that none of your users do, like turn it off, right? Like reduce that attack landscape, that threat landscape in your attack surface. And the better you're reporting, the better your note taking, the better off you're going to be here and making this argument with your IT team that doesn't want to do changes anyway. And it's 50-50, to be honest, really. You could come to them with like, hey, look, they did all the stuff that none of our users do, and the IT team's going to be like, that seems hard. Legacy protocols, that seems important. Both of those words sound important. All right, and there's a lower effort alternative to these things. So if you don't have the logging, right, and you don't want to take the notes, which I get, you still want to create some friction. I like this method too. This one I might like a little bit more. Yeah, I'm on the fence. I think I like this one a lot, but it's basically just spamming their whole data set with stuff. You're not even worried about logging it on your side. Just send them 1,000 usernames and passwords, like script it out, right? Because even if they do the easy stuff, they're like, well, they'll just, filter it out by IP address. And it's like, well, you know what? Now they're on defense, right? And if they're hosting this text file like somewhere on their web server, can you imagine if they looked and they had like a terabyte text file of usernames and passwords to see what their web hosting bill was the next day? Yeah, that would be awesome. I've got to see that like in the real world, right? Of like where somebody's complaining on the forums, Like, oh man, I was like doing this phishing campaign, and then I got this $1,000 web hosting bill because it was so good, but none of the credentials work. It's weird. All right, and what other opportunities do we have to do this, right? And so this is really, what I'm trying to get to in the talk is that we can be very creative about the friction that we create for our adversaries using just like random stuff like this, right? You can go out and make things harder for your adversary by just changing the things that they expect a little bit, right? Like putting 1,000 usernames and passwords in. It's fine. they'll have to play some defense at that point. Like, make them take actions outside of their comfort zone. Let's make things a little harder for them, because that's really what the best part of the job is. As much as I like making IT do stuff because of incident response, I like making things harder on bad guys better. So what else can we do here? Like, you know, there was some deception earlier. It talked about a lot of the internal things, right? It was using usernames internally, looking for logging there, using the fake servers, you know, doing all the fake credit cards. Like, that was pretty cool. And we can take advantage of those things by just making those data sets of adversaries like way less valuable. Like, can you imagine if we all went to one of those, you know, dark web marketplaces, and we were all selling like 600 million records from Twitter, right? Like, all of us. Like, suddenly there's, you know, 2,100 users new on the forums, and they're all selling 600 million Twitter records. It's weird. You think the one is going to stick out? You know, the one legit one? Like, who knows, right? And you can do that stuff. Like, it's free. Right, you see somebody selling your data, go out and make 1,000, you know, accounts on the forum, and, you know, have them all sell your data. It's fine. At some point, you know, the market adjusts. Like, they have to get on defense somehow. They're going to have to get creative about how they vet their buyers, which they don't want to do. They're going to have to give more information that they want to give when they want to find the legit buyers, right? And, you know, use your imagination here. You could do anything you want. All right, so what effects can we measure? So we have, it's hard to do, right? Defensive effects are hard to do and hard to measure in general, right? And this isn't going to be any different. So what we're hoping to see, right, and on the far end of things, we can build, you know, an attribution case to some extent, right? I'm not saying you're going to know where the person lives. If you want to get to that level, come talk to us afterward. But really, you know, can you build a level of attribution based on TTPs, right? Do they always, when you put in the passwords, are they on some weird time zone, right, that they're always using, right? Back to the APT1 report. Are they always on some, you know, Beijing time, right, that they're logging in? And do you track password resets? That's another kind of nice way to measure things. Are you suddenly having less password resets based on phishing, if you're automating some of that on the more mature ends? And then some other measures of success. Do your adversaries suddenly all use VPNs? Like, that's a good thing, right? Like, that's making it harder. It's harder to automate that if they're at that side of things, right? And then are they changing their infrastructure? Are they using, you know, are they paying more for bulletproof hosting, or are they having to move to, like, you know, other web frameworks or anything like that to try and put in defensive things so you don't spam their, you know, web hosting bill to $1,000 or whatever, right? So any of these changes, that means friction for our adversaries. It means that you're having an effect, you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing. And even if it's just minor stuff, I mean, you get a little satisfaction out of it, right? It's like, yeah, it feels good to like have some effect on the bad guys, because now who's on defense, right? I hope I'll ruin their weekend with their web hosting bill. All right, so I cut it short, but thank you all. Do we have any questions? Any ideas for how we continue this? I think there's some level of continuation we can do just as a community to just spamming phishing sites, right? I was thinking about that last week as I was preparing for the talk of, you know, what if we got the whole community out here just installing something on their, you know, like Fish Labs or something, right? Get something like that set up where we all just log into these phishing sites with fake credentials. Like that would be fun stuff. But do we have any questions? Yes.
So you mentioned like identifying their location as like something extra after the talk. When you're utilizing, you're almost social engineering them. You're giving them like that treat when they get that fish. You're giving it to them a lot, so they're now emotionally stimulated. They're maybe making bad choices after that. Are you finding ways of like preying on that? Maybe not giving their location, or are there other certain things that will help identify them or
Oh, gotcha, yeah, so the question is, after the adversary is logging in, giving us those indicators, like those initial kind of easy indicators, is the ease of them logging in and doing things, creating more indicators that we can take advantage of?
Yeah, or is there like some psychological, like, you're just social engineering them now, they're like cutting in your hands essentially, like maybe you can do something to them more so than just gathering data.
Oh, for sure, yeah. What more can we do in there? Well, I mean, you can get really creative when you create the environment that they're operating in. So, just using the Microsoft example, you can give them other accounts, right? You can see what they're trying to do across the board once they log in. Like, you can give them the fake credit cards, right, the guys were talking about earlier, and see them where those get used, right? So you can get really creative about the data that you give them to try and create more of those data points, right? How about a document that pings back somewhere all the time, right? If they just try and mass download stuff from OneDrive. It's like, now you're getting some good data, even if they're using a VPN. And so it can get, you can be as creative as you want to, really. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead.
You're done messing with them. Have you ever found any success in reporting to law enforcement, their hosting provider, anything like that, if you're ready to shut it down?
You trying to call the cops on me? Is that what you're asking? Sorry.
The hosting provider of wherever the phishing site is located, have you had any success with contacting the hosting provider to get them shut down, use that, or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, yeah, because the question is, have we had any success after a campaign, right, and messing with the adversaries, with the hosting providers or law enforcement? And absolutely, right, because you're building that attribution case. A lot of hosting providers, in order to take something down, even if using your logo and like clearly stealing it, they require a ton of data to actually prove, right, that they need to take it down. Like, that's a legal process. It's a pain. Takes days. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. And so any case you can build and provide to them of like, look, it depends on who you're talking to, right? But you can give them some information of like, look, I put in these credentials. This person logged in. This is what they tried to do. Like, this is all from your site, right? This whole thing, like, it needs to be taken down. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you encountered any outside sales or like someone performing the phishing uses the credentials from like a VPS that they uploaded on your net and then like encounter other data sets or other organizations that are phishing?
All right, sorry. I heard the first part. So any OPSEC, was it failures or?
Yeah, is there any outside failures on the attacker side where they have used those credentials from say a VPS online that they want people to see was online, but they got exposed and you now capture the data or
Yeah, I can't think, sorry, the question was like, have there been any OPSEC failures where we get data that we didn't give them? Is that the question? Like, yeah, to some extent, right? And so, like, for instance, in the threat hunting side of it, right, you give them those credentials and you use those indicators to find other things that they've used. You do get an idea of, if you get really lucky, you can kind of focus those indicators on finding adversaries that are targeting like specific sectors of the business even, right? You'll see like, oh, how come every user that they've tried to log in with that was successfully phished was HR or something? Like, well, that's kind of more interesting. And you can really build some really nice threat models out of data like that, right? Out of the, are they targeting certain subsets of users, subsets of the business? It can give you some indication if this is advanced or not, right? Or your red team, right? That's always a fun one when you're like, give the red team engagement like bad credentials. It's always a good day. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sorry. Yeah, that's right. That's a good comment. Some hosting providers don't give a shit. That's absolutely correct. Yeah, no matter what you give them, right? And those are the ones the bad guys like, right? The bulletproof hosting stuff. Yeah, and that's why you can't depend on those legal processes to take them down, right? You go out, create friction yourself when you can't depend on the hosting providers to help you out. Anything else? More questions? Good. All right, thank you very much.